and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous installment from very, very high above all the puerile and perfidious forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy, very frosty Tuesday.
So, I'm a little bit put off.
Why?
Because you started out by saying tremendous. This is a tremendous. Even God waited until he was done creating to say it's good.
This is tremendous. Well, I mean, the program is tremendous all on its own. And so, I mean, you're starting from a pretty good spot anyway, Ken.
Well, what you call, who was it? I think it was Bill Cosby.
Yeah?
That used to talk about man makes a car, calls it amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah, and 10 years later it's broke down. God makes a rabbit, calls it good.
Indeed, my friends. Well,
Yeah.
Welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday. It really is a snowy, frosty spring morning. And I have to tell you, even though I was not excited to go outside because the weather gizmo in the studio said 28 degrees, I am kind of happy that we got a little bit of snow. Hopefully, it snowed a whole crap load on the mountain. We can only hope, because I think that it could be a very, very, very hot summer.
We're supposed to get more Friday.
Yeah. I mean, typically in Wyoming, the springs are when we get our big snows.
Yeah.
And so hopefully
But
that trend continues.
We didn't, though.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
Usually
all
by
winter long.
April. I mean, you always got the tree limb buster at one point, but
Well, and
Yeah.
I did have parked motorcycle syndrome during the during the winter when it was like 70 degrees. Well, anyway, my friends, welcome to the program. We've got a lot to talk about on the show. Of course, there were some weekend shenanigans that the Democrats pulled off, and I think I want to begin there. If the Sheridan County Democrats can get 250, 300 people on the steps of the courthouse on a Saturday where it's actually pretty nice outside, I think you should all pay attention to what I've been saying for months, and that is, do not underestimate the Democrats. And if you look at the legislative session, I think that becomes all the more clear. There were only 6 Democrats in the House, and for definitely 2 weeks, probably more, way more actually, they pretty much dominated the narrative. Now, it was all contrived and it was all made up, but nonetheless, they were able to, I don't want to say take control because they really didn't do that, but they certainly dominated the narrative. And in a fairly conservative place like Sheridan, there's over 80% of the population of Sheridan County that is a registered Republican. That doesn't mean that they're all Republicans. There are many of them that are just straight up redcoats. But that only leaves a small percentage of the population that are Democrats. And Saturday, they were able to get a significant number of people on the courthouse steps, and they had quite the production. There were tables out front, help for illegal aliens. Of course, they didn't call them aliens. A voter registration table. They had a loudspeaker, and actually not one of the chintzy ones that they usually have. where it's just like one of those, handheld things. Nope. They had a whole sound setup, playing music, although, well, they called it music. I don't know that Agent 29 would refer to it in such a way. But anyway, they did have some things that sounded a little bit rhythmic anyway. But yeah, 250 people on the steps of the courthouse. And I did prepare a couple of what I think are pretty indicative pictures from the event. Here's a good one. Now, remember, this is on the courthouse steps. This picture actually was taken to the right of the courthouse steps. So that's fantastic. What about this one? Yeah, these, the Democrats, they're all about peace and unity and bringing everybody together. But there, the Sheridan County Democrats are again flashing swastikas. Now, to be fair, this sign really was in the minority, and I did have to kind of look for it to find it. I mean, I knew that there was going to be a swastika somewhere in the crowd, but there we found one.
I think that shirt is interesting.
Yeah.
Veritas.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Here's another one: Fight Fascism, Berlin, 1960 or 1936. That's great. Here's another one. I'm sure this one was a pretty good sized banner. Notice the sign in the bottom right hand corner. It says "Hate will never make America great," and then they've got a big sign that says "F Trump." So definitely not a banner day for the Democrats. But my point is that you shouldn't underestimate them. They do have a pretty good following, and they are gaining. Now, there's also over the weekend, actually not over the weekend, yesterday, I published a pretty good piece. I think it's pretty good. Of course I do, because I wrote it about all of the people in the Republican primary. There are 9 folks running for the House of Representatives right now. There's Jillian Balow.
Just you're talking U.S. House, because sometimes people get confused.
Well, they do. It's true. We do talk about the state house, which we're going to in a little bit.
Oh, do we have to?
Yes, we do. Okay. Yeah. I have found, Ken, you will be so happy. I have found perhaps what we should refer to as a smoking gun. Well, maybe not, because the Democrats, they're not in favor of firearms. But anyway, we'll get there in a minute. So back to the piece. There's 9 people running for the U.S. House of Representatives. There's Chuck Gray, Jillian Balow, this joke of a candidate, John Romero Martinez, David Girault, who I've already done an interview with on the program. I thought he gave a really good interview, by the way. He didn't really know that much about state issues, although I don't know if you're running for Congress that you need to be, know the ins and outs. Certainly need to know some of them. There's Dennis Beitman, this guy named Frank Chapman, Kevin Christensen, who, by the way, is also a colonel in the U.S. military. I don't know if he's a full bird colonel like Brent Bean, but I did find that interesting. Then there's Matt McGinnis. Haven't heard anything from him since he announced that he was running for the U.S. House of Representatives. And then there's Reed Reisner. So 9 candidates. And let me just give you kind of the rundown of the piece. Essentially, what I'm arguing is that with this many candidates, there's really not any room to really drill down on specific issues that you and the candidates are going to have to, because right now the only thing that pretty much all of them are saying is they love President Trump. Whether or not that's actually true, that's pretty much the only thing you're hearing from all of their campaigns. That they're all America first, that they want to, expansion of domestic energy, opposition to federal regulation, border security, and of course we have to do something with all the illegal immigrants here. But outside of those big bullet points, there's very little that's coming out of any of these campaigns. So the differences that do exist tend to be more stylistic, tone, emphasis, and of course, political history. There's some of those people that are running for office that have no political history in the state, which I don't know. Ken, what do you think about that? I tend to think that sometimes it's good to have a candidate that is not immersed in politics. Just to have a guy that hasn't been in there. That's what we got with President Trump. That's why a lot of people voted for him.
Yeah, there's that outsider argument.
Yeah.
The problem with outsiders is that Cheyenne is full of snakes,
Yes,
and you don't know who's who.
that's true.
And
Well, I think that you've often said that it took you 2 years to kind of figure out how things work down
and
there.
figure out the lay of the land, and that's true. And then there's also there's a certain amount of respect that you acquire, even if they don't like you in particular. They at least
Have a
begin
lot
to
of
respect
You
you.
have a lot of experience with that, do you, Ken?
I did this year.
Well, you're a pretty popular guy this year.
Uh,
Well, I mean, you try to do the right thing, and the snakes come out to try to get you. So really, with the U.S. House race, there's not a lot of difference in policy, and I don't think that we've had enough time really to get any of them to drill down. So let me just give you some of the differences. For example, there's Jillian Balow. She was the state superintendent of public instruction before she resigned to take a similar job in Virginia. Interestingly enough, the day that she announced her campaign for the U.S. House of Representatives was 4 years to the day that she resigned as being the Wyoming state superintendent of public instruction. I don't know that that's significant, but it is interesting. Chuck Gray, he is, of course, the Wyoming Secretary of State. And if you missed the interview with him, I published that yesterday on the podcast. So you can listen to it there, or you can go back and watch the video of this program. He's passed several important election integrity measures. He's consistently fought against big government. One of my favorite sound bites is from Chuck Gray when he was in the House of Representatives. And he said the spending of the Wyoming's government is like they're tossing dollar bills out of helicopters. Then there's Dennis Bo Beitman. He served one term in the Wyoming House before he moved to the Senate, where he has served 2 terms. Though his voting record was pretty conservative the first 2 terms, one in the House and one in the Senate. This past session, he has presided over a Senate that has moved decidedly to the left. And I don't think that there's any argument to be made that that isn't absolutely the case. And I love this paragraph, so I'm just going to read the whole thing to you. Then there's Reed Reisner. Reisner ran a spectacularly failed campaign for the U.S. Senate in 2024, in which he didn't win a single county. Last year, he launched a bid to buy the social media company TikTok before abandoning it amid his filing of a civil lawsuit against a former state senator. In what can only be described as a unique campaign strategy, he's filed 4 other lawsuits. I don't know. This is funny.
the opinions of the producer are not necessarily those of the.
But they should be. They absolutely
I'm just
should
trying to
be.
keep from getting sued.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can get sued for anything, Ken. Anyway, it's a great article on the Open Range Record, and you should go check it out. So let's talk about the No Kings protest again. I know I'm bouncing back and forth a little bit, but there's a piece in the Turkey Vulture, and this one begins, Wyomingites, quoting now, crowded the state capitol lawn and front entrance Saturday, joining millions of others who protested nationwide during the 3rd official No Kings protest. They should move to Sheridan. There's a No Kings protest like every other weekend, or at least there was. The movement's name reflects participants' strongly held belief that President Donald Trump exercises his presidential power in a king-like way, ignoring checks and balances. Well, it's always been fascinating ever since these things started. They're freely protesting in a free country that they shouldn't have a king. And if we had a king, they wouldn't be allowed to freely protest the king's existence. But, quote, Pam Wright told the Turkey Vulture, "This democracy is worth fighting for. I want the Constitution to hold up. Otherwise, Independence Day doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot. First, we don't have a democracy. Thomas Jefferson described democracy as the worst possible form of government. And if we have a constitution, it kind of means that we don't have a democracy, because we have a representative republic, a representative constitutional republic. Now, from the pictures of the protest in Cheyenne, what struck me is what wasn't there, and that was an American flag. There were all sorts of other flags in front of the Wyoming Capitol, even a Canadian one, a Mexican flag, and I believe there may have been an Iranian flag or two, but I can't be sure on that one.
Canada does have a king. They might have a reason to protest.
They might have a reason to protest. Well, part of the country has a king. I don't know about the rest of them. But in any case, all of these protests are nothing more than AstroTurf. And what I mean by that is they've been orchestrated. And let me see if I actually got a picture. I don't know. No, I didn't prep that picture. But from the protest in Sheridan, there were a couple of signs that were obviously pre-printed. And you could tell that they were mass-produced. So the question is, you show up at a protest, and the signs are already made. Is that not your first clue that this thing is being orchestrated? There were reports over the weekend that Soros and other billionaires have funneled $3 billion into this whole, AstroTurf movement of creating the No Kings protest. Really what it is just the Democrats' bank account. The Democrats, they don't really have any winning arguments as far as, policy goes. And so they just have to create disruption, which is what you saw over the weekend. So anyway, I hope you had fun with the No Kings protest. I did. Lots of fun pictures. I've got a lot more to show you. I just didn't have time this morning to go through them. So the next segment, you know what, Ken, let's go ahead and take a break because the next segment is going to take us way past the break, I think. So we'll go take a quick profit timeout. Then we'll come back and we'll get into this lawsuit against the Freedom Caucus. I found a smoking gun article. It's too bad Clark Stith didn't find it before I did. Back in a minute. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson, your illustrious host, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Politics is funny, and we ought to laugh at politicians. One of the great things about election season is all of the stupid crap that politicians do and say. And we really should make fun of them. That's one of the only joys we get out of a season that is littered with campaign signs and your mailbox is chocked full of all sorts of stuff of dubious quality. But you should make fun of politicians, and that's what the Campbell County Republican women have decided to do. They've invited Kyle Mann from the Babylon Bee, and he is going to be in Gillette on April 18th. He's a funny guy, and if you want to take an evening or evening and afternoon, I guess there's two shows. And you want to just laugh at politics, well, you should do that. You should go to CampbellCountyRepublicanWomen.com and get tickets. They're at a good price, and if you want to take an evening and have some fun, that's a good way to do it. CampbellCountyRepublicanWomen.com. Now, there's a piece on the cow pie, deep in the steaming pile of cow pie, and it is entitled Trump's Popularity on Trial in Lawmakers' Defamation Case. And we don't have to go too far into the piece to see the obvious bias of the mainstream liberal drive-by media. Let me just read this to you. This is the introduction to the piece. You know, you pull up an article and there's a little snippet at the top of it, kind of gives you a little teaser. Here's what this one says. Whether backing Trump makes a person a true Republican in Wyoming is a key point in the defamation case. Two lawmakers are waging against the Wyoming Freedom Caucus's campaign group. Quoting, the group falsely claimed that lawmakers voted to keep Trump off the ballot. Now, riddle me this, that, Claire McFarland. Is that not what the lawsuit is about? Is not that the claim that was in the mailers that the Wyoming Freedom Caucus PAC sent out, or the Wyoming Freedom PAC, I guess it's called? The central claim was that lawmakers voted to keep Trump off the ballot. And so dummies J.T. Larson and Cody Wiley decided that they were going to sue for defamation. And why are they suing? Because of the claim that they voted to keep Trump off the ballot, which they absolutely did, and I'm going to show that to you in just a little second. But for the cow pie to print an article that is allegedly news, this is the bullcrap that caused us to create the open range record. Because, my friends, this piece of trash is not news. This is opinion wrapped up as to look at like news. It's an example of what I have termed opinion journalism, with journalism in quotation marks. Because what you get from the liberal lamestream drive-by media is not news. Okay, it is not just the facts. It is somebody else's opinion, and this is clearly opinion. Let me give you a couple more paragraphs here. Quote, President Donald Trump's popularity in Wyoming could be on trial in a high-profile political lawsuit this year. State Reps Cody Wiley, J.T. Larson, the Bobbsey twins, yet slightly less talented, both Republicans from Rock Springs, sued the Wyoming Freedom Caucus's campaign arm for defamation in 2024 after the Political Action Committee had mailers distributed claiming the pair had voted against keeping Trump on the ballot. The PAC also sent out a text message blast claiming that Larson voted with the radical left, and that's in quotation marks, to remove Trump from the ballot. That part is not in quotation marks. The truth is that Cody Wiley and J.T. Larson consistently vote with the radical left in Wyoming. There is no question about that. You can look at, if you just go to evidence-based Wyoming, they vote with the Democrat Party. And I don't know the exact number, but we'll look it up during the break, or maybe Ken can look it up. But they vote, my guess is, over 70% of the time with the Democrats. Now, no vote about Trump's ballot eligibility had surfaced in the Wyoming legislature. This is another example of the opinion that is generated, the opinion garbage that is generated by the cow pie. That is absolutely not true, my friends. There absolutely was a vote on the House floor, which would have had the result of, essentially, it would have prevented the Secretary of State from filing an amicus brief in the Colorado case. And what was happening there is Colorado tried to remove Trump off the ballot. And so Secretary Gray got in the fight, filed an amicus brief with the Supreme Court in support of Trump. And so, yes, that budget amendment absolutely did relate to that. And like I said, here in just a second, I'm going to show you the video. And then I have a shocking piece from Wyophile from 2024 that absolutely admits it. Continuing. Rather, Wiley and Larson voted in favor of keeping a budget amendment that sought to bar the Wyoming Secretary of State's office from spending Wyoming taxpayer dollars on out-of-state lawsuits where Wyoming wasn't a party. Okay, so that is almost a direct quotation from Clark Stith on the floor. But the issue at hand is what the results of that vote would have been. Was it just the budget amendment, or were there other ancillary things attached to it? Well, as I'm going to show you in video from the floor here in just a second, it absolutely did have to do with Trump. Did you find that number, Ken?
I'm on the page here, and then you started talking about a video, so I laid that up.
Sorry, Ken. We'll get to the video in just a second, but I'm really curious how often they vote with the Democrats.
So I had to do this. So this is, maybe some people aren't very familiar with
Yeah, there we go.
evidence-based
Yeah,
Wyoming.
great.
Notice, if you will, the top 3 or 4 legislators.
Yeah,
listed
indeed.
there.
Indeed. Number 3.
Yeah, you don't want to be number 1 because then they
then
gun for you. So you scroll down here, and those are considered conservative, and we have moderates, and under liberal we have
there's J.T. Larson.
J.T. Larson, Cody Wiley. Now your percentages.
See, you got to do a little math here. So if you go over to that column that it's the percentages, those are the percentages of which that candidate aligns with their party registration. Essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see there, J.T. Larson at 27.1% of the time he votes Republican, and his pal, the other Bobbsey twin, Cody Wiley, 24.5%.
So there's, just while we're here.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is a great graph here. So you know how the Republicans are always accused of, they just vote the same. They're all the same. They always vote in a block according to their DC overlords.
We are kind of bunched up there this time.
Well, yeah, but what this shows you is the vote spread. How often the individual, legislators side with the party, and that bunch over on the right, those are all the conservatives. But you can also see the other Republicans that.
Oh, look at that!
Looky there. 84% with the Democrats. Who else we got there?
Well, we got Cody right here.
86.5% of the time with the Democrats.
Imagine that.
Now, he's clearly a Trump supporter. Didn't you know that?
There's Julie Jarvis.
86.3. My pal, Julie.
Andrew Byron. I don't know where JT's at, but he's got to be right in here, too.
There's Lloyd Larson, 89%.
Who's this character over here? Oh, surprise.
Yeah,
surprise.
that's a big shocker there. So anyway, go to evidencebasedwyoming.com. It's a great tool. I use it all the time. So that pretty much does it for Claire McFarland's piece of garbage in the cow pie. Now I want to go to the video. And what this is from February 19th of 2024 on the floor of the House of Representatives. This is part of the debate. Now, this isn't the original where they introduced the budget amendment. I think this is either second reading or third reading where there was an amendment to remove that budget footnote. And Ken, maybe before we do this, maybe you can describe for us what a budget footnote is.
Now, budget footnotes are basically the legislature expressing its intent as for what those monies are intended to do. They can specify, and so that it can't be changed, or they can make a suggestion. And interestingly enough, that's where the governor likes to do his editing,
his little dirty work,
his vetoing. I think that's probably
pretty close.
Sufficient.
So basically, this budget footnote, the one that's in question, the whole one about this whole lawsuit, basically said that the Secretary of State, and it was specifically directed at the Secretary of State's office. It didn't really have anything to do with the treasurer or the superintendent of public instruction or the governor for that matter. It was directed at the Secretary of State and it would have restricted him from using taxpayer dollars for any out-of-state litigation without the consent of the legislature. Now, this whole video is kind of long because to get the full context, you got to watch this thing. So, Ken, we'll do a kind of a stop and start, but let's go ahead and play the video, and we'll just get started here. And it starts with Chris Knapp on the floor.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I would move second reading amendment number 6 to House Bill 1 and ask for your favorable consideration. This basically, if you remember, is the line item forbidding funding to go to litigation outside the state without legislative approval. So in looking at this, the position itself, it's one of our top duly elected positions, great responsibility towards safeguarding and facilitating free and fair elections. So I asked myself, well, have we done this before? What's the history? Have we allowed this? Absolutely, we have. The head of the executive branch has been granted authority and funds to intervene in any case involving early closures of coal-fired power plants who have a direct impact on Wyoming contracts and our Wyoming economy. We can sue or join suits as a party in other states. So what would this solve? I think you heard me ask the question the other day, does he not have an obligation to Wyoming voters to intercede when their votes are disenfranchised? That's happened in the most recent case for a candidate who's received 70% of his party's vote in primaries or caucuses. And you heard the vice chairman answer that question with a yes. He does have that obligation. There's a matter of urgency when such drastic state action is taken. Removing a bona fide candidate from the ballot will obviously be appealed and rise quickly to the highest court in the land. The office needs authority to act quickly and in the best interest of Wyoming citizens.
Okay, so pause it right there, Ken. Okay, so there you have it. I mean, it is very clearly, or the debate is very clearly about removing Trump from the ballot in Colorado. Now, I mean, I guess there's an argument to be made to say, well, Wyoming didn't have anything to do with that. Well, I don't know that that's necessarily true, because what Representative Knapp is arguing is that in a state that 70% of the people voted for Trump, and it's I think in 2020 it was 69%, and then in 2024 it was slightly higher than that. But what he's arguing is that by removing Trump from the ballot in Colorado, Wyoming voters could be disenfranchised, saying, hey, you know, we're artificially taking some guy off the ballot, and so the will of Wyoming's voters could be thrown into question because of what another state does. Now, this next part is Clark Stith, and let me just read to you. Let's go back to the cow pie piece in just a second here. Where was it? Yeah, so the cow pie piece says, quote, rather, Wiley and Larson voted in favor of keeping a budget amendment that sought to bar the Wyoming Secretary of State's office from spending Wyoming taxpayer dollars on out-of-state lawsuits where Wyoming wasn't a party. Okay, so the piece in the cow pie leads you to believe that that's a fact, when in reality, it is almost a direct quotation from Representative Clark Stith, who is now, go ahead and play it again, Ken.
He's not speaking. It seems like the representative is not speaking to the amendment, but about unrelated litigation out of state.
Thank you, Representative Stith. Representative Knapp, let's try to keep it the discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I just use that as an example of using funds to litigate in another state or for another state's cause. Thank you.
Any other members? Discussion on this amendment? Representative Stith?
Okay, now listen to what he
Mr. Chairman,
says.
So on and against this amendment, and the fundamental question in this amendment is, how many chief executives does our state have? We have one chief executive. If each of the 5 elected state officials can file litigation and take a position for the state of Wyoming outside our state borders in cases in which the state is not a party and the relevant agency is not a party, then our state doesn't speak with one voice. It is the obligation and perhaps the duty at times for our chief executive to take such positions, but we can't have 5 different chief executives for the state. So that's the first and most basic reason to be against this amendment. The second reason is more practical. If we're spending our taxpayer dollars to give it to lawyers in Colorado or Ohio or New Hampshire, if that's what we're doing, it's to file a so-called amicus brief. That's not a great use of our state's money for a real simple reason. Earlier in my career, my boss was a former Solicitor General of the United States, and the practice was a practice of Supreme Court clerks. I was not a Supreme Court clerk. A practice was to file briefs, and each of those clerks, what they would say is that what happens to amicus briefs when the judges' clerks get those, when the judges get those, what do they do with amicus briefs? They go in the trash because they don't have time to read them. Okay, amicus briefs, frankly, aren't very useful. They are useful in 2 situations.
Okay, so pause.
They're useful.
So what Stith is arguing right now is specifically about what Secretary of State Chuck Gray did, filed an amicus brief. So his argument is saying, look, this is a waste of money because this amicus brief is going to go in the trash, which that may be true. It may not be true. It's kind of irrelevant. But you can see that Clark Stith is saying that this whole debate about this budget amendment is about that amicus brief. And that was the whole reason behind that one was to keep Trump on the ballot in Colorado. So clearly, even Clark Stith, who was the lawyer for Cody Wiley and J.T. Larson, even he is admitting that that's what this whole thing is about. Let's continue.
In the situation where the parties' lawyers are not competent, that happens, that's not very often, but it happens sometimes. The other time when amicus briefs are useful is if the parties to the litigation are in collusion or in cahoots with one another, and the amicus represents the true opposing view. So the most basic reason to vote against this amendment is that we have 1 chief executive, not 5. Thank you. On and against.
Representative Pendergraft for your first time.
Thank you, Mr.
Just
Speaker.
can't
It's been
get
said
enough
that no
press.
man's an island, and I would extend that to this state. We are not an island either. We're facing a very contentious election year, and we have no way to be able to predict the sort of affronts that will come. Do not believe it is right in any way to tie the hands of the executive of this state, who is responsible for elections and should be the person first available to comment and to help in these situations. There will certainly be issues raised, and we need to be prepared. I am for the amendment.
Thank you, Representative Pendergraft. Representative Ward for your first time.
Okay, so pause right there. All right. So again, it's very, very, very clear that the debate is about removing Trump from the ballot in Colorado. It's about the ability of the Secretary of State to file an amicus brief with the Supreme Court about Colorado removing Trump from the ballot. So, I mean, you got arguments on both sides that clearly admit that that's what it's about. And whether or not Clark Stith, the venerable, what do you call a judge? The Honorable Clark Stith?
Well, whether you... Yes.
I wonder if his nameplate is going to say Drag Show Clark Stith on it. I mean, it should. All right.
You could have one made for him.
I could probably have one made and send it to him. All right. But anyway, you can definitely see that the debate on the floor is clearly about removing Trump from the ballot in Colorado and the Secretary of State filing that amicus brief. Now, there's a couple more pieces that I want you to see. The next one up is Jeanette Ward. She's quoted
Thank you,
in the
Mr.
article.
Chairman. In accordance with Rule 12-4, I ask for a recorded vote.
Okay, good job, Jeanette Ward.
It's moved and seconded. Any other further discussion, Representative Ward? For your first time, Representative Jennings, for your first time.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Listen to what he
So I think
says.
this discussion that was had earlier on and pertaining to this particular amendment, I think the good speaker from the land of the southwest part of the state makes a point that we do this, and we only have one chief executive, but we have 5 electeds. And it's interesting that this amendment that we're trying to pull is only directed towards one. So it makes it very unbalanced that we would not do the same thing to at least the other 3. If we wanted to do something here that was across the board, I think that might be an honest debate. But here we're picking one of the electeds and we're leaving the other 3 alone for something that presumably might happen. Presumably, on and for the amendment.
Okay, so that is the second big argument here. That the budget amendment, the footnote, it only had to deal with one of our top 5 elected officers. That is Secretary of State Chuck Gray. And so if this lawsuit is not about removing Trump from the ballot, then why was that budget footnote only directed at one of them? Well, it's the answer to that is pretty simple. Because it is about removing Trump from the ballot. All right, now I'd like to go to I want you to get in the Wayback Machine. Yeah, it's fun when you get to do this.
I just was.
Well, you were. That's true. We
I
were
was,
back.
yeah, I'm looking at all the people going by in the back.
That was a very nice tie you had.
Yeah, I still have it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's you only have so many ties, and you have 40 days or 20 days where you get to wear them. I mean, you got to recycle them.
That's the major decision each day is how am I going to look?
You're going to look different for the next day. All right. So I want to take you back to Wildfile in a 2024 piece that was published on February 20th, which is the day after everything that I just showed you. So, yeah, the debate on the floor. Wildfile publishes this piece, and it's entitled, Gray's Involvement in Trump Case Prompts Legislators to Ask Who Can Sue on Wyoming's Behalf. Now, listen to this part. Quote, this is from Wildfile. They're not exactly the most conservative bunch of people. In fact, they're a bunch of raging liberals. But here's what the piece says. Listen close. Quote, the current debate stems from an amendment included in a footnote of the budget bill that would restrict Gray from using state funds to engage in out-of-state lawsuits. The footnote includes one exception, that the legislature could authorize such lawsuits, and then the very next paragraph says this. In November, Gray joined 2 other Republican secretaries of state in filing an amicus brief that advocated for overturning Colorado's court decision to remove Donald Trump from the state's ballot because the former president's role in inciting the January 6 riots at the U.S. Capitol. So there it is in Wildfile, black and white, that's what this whole thing stems from. And then if you go to page 3, Kangaroo Mike Giroux, the Democrat from Teton County, he says, quote, there's no line item in the Secretary of State's budget for fighting for Donald Trump, he says. And then there's another paragraph. This one I find I find interesting because they quote Secretary of State Chuck Gray in the piece. Here's what it says, quote, as Wyoming's chief elections official, I have been fighting to keep President Trump on the ballot, Gray said in an email. That is why I filed the amicus brief. The budget footnote would explicitly prevent Secretary of State Chuck Gray from filing such, amicus briefs. And so the result of that vote would be to prevent Gray from fighting to keep Donald Trump on the ballot. This is not rocket surgery, my friends. This is pretty easy. And then, because of what Chuck Gray did, the members of the Appropriations Committee in the House, which, by the way, in 2024, the chairman was the most liberal Republican in quotation marks. It's only because he hangs that R at the end of his name, Bob Nicholas. he and Lloyd Larson and Tom Walters and Clark Stith, who was on the Appropriations Committee, crafted this budget amendment to prevent Secretary of State Chuck Gray from doing that. So in retaliation of Chuck Gray fighting for Donald Trump, they put this budget footnote in there. Here's what the piece says. Quote, Gray also defended the Secretary of State's State Office's $3.18 million request. The expense was an upgrade for existing business filing software, he said in an email. It would be cheaper than issuing a request for proposals to companies that would have to build the system from the ground up. So in other words, what happened is there was another budget line item in which Secretary Gray requested $3.18 million to upgrade all of the electronics in the Secretary of State's office. And so because of that amicus brief, the Appropriations Committee it tried to eliminate, or they did eliminate, that amount of money from the Secretary's budget. So not only do you have a footnote, which they openly admit is about Donald Trump, there is retaliation also in the budget for what Chuck Gray did. And so you put those two things together, and it shows you that absolutely, this budget footnote was keeping Donald Trump off the ballot. That's what that vote was for. And that's also why Jeanette Ward called for a recorded vote on that one to prove who had voted against or who had voted to keep Trump off the ballot. I mean, this is clear as day, and the lawsuit is just as dumb as the people that brought it. Let's go ahead and take our second break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some sleeper cells that might be in the country that Biden may have opened the door for. There's 1,500 of them that crossed. Back in a minute. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. And, you know, every day that I start this program, I get to do what I absolutely love doing. You know, and they always say that if you love what you're doing, it's not a job.
The aforementioned site, Evidence-Based Wyoming,
Yes.
says I'm right, 99.3% of the time.
Yes, you'll always be left to me, my friend. Always, and it's don't feel bad because most people are anyway. So welcome back to the program, my friends. It's a frosty Tuesday here at the Cowboys. Well, it's not frosty in here; it's frosty outside. And I don't really get too worked up about spring snowstorms because I know that right now, even though the motorcycle is covered up with some snow, it is not going to be that long, and it's all going to melt away. But the other thing that spring also brings is baseball. Now, did you ever notice that that baseball fields are never the same? I mean, it's not like a football field. A football field is 100 yards long and 50 yards wide. They all are.
You're ruining it.
No, not at all. But baseball, totally different. And, you go to Coors Field, which, by the way, I didn't tell you, Ken, but the lovely Christine and I bought tickets May 18th to go down to Denver and hopefully watch my Texas Rangers kick the crap out of the Rockies.
You like to watch baseball in the snow?
Well, it might snow. It might snow in May in Denver. You never know. It could. But that's the only time the Rangers are going to be this close. I mean, I guess I could travel to Dallas to see them, but
I did have a video.
You do have a video.
Yeah, it talks a little bit about what you were talking about, but
yeah, let's go ahead and play it.
Okay, let's see if I can find it.
Oh, okay.
There it is.
All right, watch this.
Go.
Played baseball growing up. Did you know that the dimensions to a baseball field are just whatever? It's completely true. Every Major League Baseball field is different. The infield's always the same, 90 feet to each base. But the outfield fence, they just make it up. This is 100% true. To hit a home run in Fenway Park, Boston Red Sox have got to hit that ball 302 feet. Houston Astros, on the other hand, Minute Maid Park, they have to hit the ball 436 feet. That's a 45% difference. And no one ever talks about it. Like, maybe there's a reason why the Red Sox have been to 13 World Series. And the Astros were swept in one. It's like, hey guys, there's no rule. Move in your fence. Make it easier on yourselves. A 45% difference. Can you imagine if any other sport just decided to start doing that? There'd be an uproar, right? You see that excited NBA coach? Hey, great news, guys. We're playing in Chicago this week. The rims there are only 5.5 feet tall.
It's exactly right, though. I mean, there are... Every baseball stadium is different. That's one of the reasons why, one of a couple of different reasons why they call Coors Field in Denver the home run hitters park. One of those is because of the altitude. But it is I don't even know if it's a smaller field. It's just the dimensions of the field are a little bit different, kind of lend itself for knocking balls out of the park. And that's done for a couple of different reasons. That a baseball game where there are no home runs, sometimes they get to be a little bit boring. And you got to have a crowd, and you want people to be able to catch a home run ball. And
I never went that way myself. I love, like a football game, I love a good 6-3.
God.
Every point counts, and I like defense. I love a good pitcher's duel.
Yeah.
Boring
game though.
It is fun sitting there when they do a home run and the fountains torch up at the far end there underneath the scoreboards. And Coors Field, if you've not been there,
It's a great ballpark.
it is truly a great one. I guess it's getting old now.
Yeah, well, we're getting old, Ken. Of course, I would never. Well, I guess I just did admit that on my program.
Yeah,
But
well,
Coors Field, great ballpark. Globe Life Field in Dallas, got to watch a game there. That's a great ballpark too.
I can't go to Dallas anymore.
Why not?
I've been to Dallas twice,
Yeah.
and it snowed both times.
Well, you were there at the wrong time.
Yeah,
my
well,
friend.
they told me to never come back.
But anyway, my friends, did you know, Ken, that in Denver they have to keep the baseballs in a humidifier?
Yeah. Yeah, I did know that.
Yeah, when Coors Field first opened, there was this big uproar that the ball behaved differently at 5,200 feet, and so they put all the baseballs in a humidifier.
Well, about that time, there were things going on all over the league. I can't remember their names, but sat there in Coors Field and watched two guys that were going after a home run record, and
right.
they,
So that would
they
have been Mark McGuire, Sammy Sosa.
yeah. We were sitting close enough to first base that you could hear whenever McGuire got on base, you could hear the conversation between the first baseman and
That's cool.
how you doing? Yeah.
Yeah, our tickets are
cool.
are right on the third baseline. We're in row 1,
Yep.
so we wanted to get as close to the dugout as we could. So we're super excited to
Yeah,
go.
we
It's
used to
gonna be-
sit. We used to sit right over the top of the dugout on the first base side.
Yeah,
pretty fun.
And I've got my Texas Rangers jersey. Unfortunately, they traded Simeon. That Simeon was my man, in Dallas, but that's okay. Still a Texas Rangers jersey, and we're gonna have a good time May 18th. I'm super excited. All right, one thing I'm not all that excited about is how many Iranians, illegal aliens, were able to cross the border when Joe Biden was president. And there's a piece from the New York Post saying that there were over 1,500 that crossed the border. The piece is called Mounting Concerns About Iran Sleeper Cells After 1,500 Stopped at Border. And I quote, about 1,500 Iranians were intercepted at the border during the Biden administration, but it's unknown. But the unknown number is who got through. That's the one that's alarming officials. Quote, we have no idea how many people got around, obviously. The numbers are deeply concerning, said Senator Bill Hagerty of Tennessee, a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee who previously served as U.S. ambassador to Japan during the first Trump administration. About half of the intercepted Iranians were released into the country, says Hagerty. So half of those 1,500, they just turned them loose in the country. Apparently, referencing a Fox News report from last year that 1,504 Iranians were arrested at the border between 2021 and 2024, with 700 of them released into the country pending court cases. The U.S. has long listed Iran as a state sponsor of terrorism. That's kind of why we're at war with them right now. The number of Iranians, and we haven't talked about this, Ken. What do you think of the war with Iran?
I think it's about damn time.
I think it's about darn time too.
All of this time, we've messed with Iraq, we messed with Afghanistan.
Why not mess with Iran
and all these other things? Iran has been the prime state sponsor of terror for virtually
Decades.
forever.
Yeah.
And why it ever went this far is a little bit beyond me. I did read this morning, and maybe this weighs into the conversation. Trump is claiming there's been a regime change.
Oh.
And that he may cease hostilities. So my question is, if that happens to be true, how does that affect these possible sleeper cells? What might their reaction be? Would they stand down, or would they take advantage of a lull?
A couple of things. First, I think when somebody tells you they're going to kill you, I think you should probably pay attention to that. Being in the position that I'm in, invariably, I get a lot of fun messages through different channels, and a couple of them, I didn't necessarily think that they were threats, but they concerned me enough that I asked a couple people. And one of them, I think I've told you about this one before, but it's the funnier of the bunch. But it said, you should get your conservative friends to outlaw rope before it's too late for you. And, I thought it was kind of funny, and I showed a couple of friends, and the resounding opinion of all of them was, you should probably go talk to the sheriff. But you take seriously the people that threaten you. You know, we've got a friend in Cheyenne, and she has a binder full of all the threats that she's received over the years, and it's about that thick. And so, you know, if somebody is threatening to hurt you, you should take them seriously. There's no reason why you shouldn't. Now, Iran, for years, well, since 1979, they've been saying death to America, death to the little Satan, death to the great Satan. We're the great Satan. And so, first, they're the chief sponsor of terror in the world, or, well, they were. Second, they have been threatening to kill Americans for decades. And so why wouldn't we take that seriously? And as you rightly point out, Ken, for years, probably decades, we've just piddled around with Iran, and we've not taken them seriously.
Well, worse.
Giving them money.
We send them cash, and then we allow them to develop a nuclear program on the belief, the crazy idea that they're going to play by the rules.
Yeah.
And then we all act surprised when they're not playing by the rules. They sent a missile. Supposedly, they were supposed to limit themselves to 1,200 miles with their missiles.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then they launched a couple that went quite well beyond that.
Yeah. So
and if people, I'm so surprised.
I'm shocked.
Really shocked.
I'm absolutely shocked. But you know, I think that it's about darn time, and I don't know that I'm in favor of the U.S. being the policeman of the world, and I don't think that this is a case of that.
I'm not particularly in favor of ground troops. Now, you can never bomb somebody completely into submission.
We tried that in Vietnam. It didn't really work out so good.
Yeah, eventually you got to have ground troops if your goal is a complete regime change. With the type of technology we have now, and we've seen some pretty amazing things just in the last, it's been 30 years, 35 years since I was in Desert Storm.
Wow. Does it seem like it's been that long?
No. And time does go quickly, though. I just was made aware this morning that my oldest grandson turned 18.
Hey, big day for him, right?
Say, Charlie, you don't have to send his mother money anymore.
It paid off. Well, and for him, that's a pretty big day. You know, you got to go to the post office and register for the draft and all that. Not that we'd probably ever have another draft, but that's. I remember when I had to do that. That was a weird day.
So, on the day that the Russians invaded Afghanistan,
okay,
I was a senior in high school, and I walk into my room coming back from school, and my dad left a note on my bed, and it said, "When you're wounded and left on Afghanistan's plane and the women come out to cut what remains, just roll to your rifle and blow out your brains and go to your God as a soldier." Rudyard Kipling. I remember my blood running pretty cold.
I think I would remember that if my dad gave me that.
Yeah,
that
I remember my blood running cold because, we had no idea what this was going to turn into. And
well, the Russians didn't either.
Yeah.
That didn't turn out so good for them.
Didn't turn out very good for us.
Well, no, it didn't. And it's a lot of some of this, and I want to try to draw a distinction here because I've seen a lot of commentary from so-called Wyoming conservatives that claim that this is terrible and we should have never been doing anything with Iran. I don't see it that way. We have to defend our allies. And I have seen some reporting that Iran was a lot closer to a nuclear weapon than anybody realized, that it was a matter of days, not weeks.
And that brings us full circle back to what we're talking about, is this idea of sleeper cells. If you're going to fight a war, it's always better to fight it on their turf, in their cities, and putting their people in jeopardy as opposed to ours. And there's an awful lot of ignorance about war.
Yes.
And when we actually do have to go fight again, it's not going to be pretty.
No, and here, in the point I was getting to is that we have an obligation to protect our allies, and we've always been a supporter of Israel, Now, does that mean that you can't criticize them? Of course not. You know, we absolutely should criticize the decisions of our leaders. And by the way, the term criticize doesn't necessarily mean that it's negative. I mean, that means that you're asking the right questions. You're asking the specific questions. To criticize means
critical thinking.
yeah, to use your noodle and say, all right, so what what are the reasons behind doing this? And I think one of the big ones is if they got a nuclear weapon, which I've seen some reporting that says they were very, very close, much closer than any of the media led us to believe, that they would wipe out Israel. And they've made no bones about that.
And with open borders, there's nothing saying they can't carry something into here.
Yeah, sure. Exactly right, which is the point with this whole sleeper cell article. But, I agree with you, Ken. I think that it's about darn time we did something with Iran. And, before 1979, Iran was a very, very different place. I mean, it's a very open place, very progressive. By progressive, I don't mean left. I mean that it was open. Most, I think I read somewhere that like 40 some percent of their workforce was women, that a large percentage of women were going to college. Somewhere I've got a video that it's actually a slideshow, but it just shows different pictures from Iran pre-1979.
Yeah.
And you could have taken, I don't know, the culture of Los Angeles and transported it into the Middle East, into Tehran, and you would see a lot of the same things, the same clothes, the same, students hanging out at the university.
I think I've mentioned it before. We almost moved there.
Yeah.
In 77, 78, right about in there. My stepfather was, he'd been with Mountain Bell for 30 years or so and was communications, and they were looking at developing a new system. Then we had the regime change.
Whoopsie.
And a lot of those Americans that were over there were taken hostage.
Yes.
400 plus days. And that's why they were all over there, because it was very open under the Shah. And some probably should have been done back then, but
well, yeah, and so the point being is that pretty much overnight, when the Ayatollah Khomeini took over, no more women in the workforce, no more women going to college, no more women dressing as they want. You got to wear the hijab all the time. That it went straight up to Sharia law, and Iran changed from a pretty open country to one that is absolutely a faux religious dictatorship. The reason I say faux religious is Islamism. There's a difference between Islam and Islamism. Islam is the religion. Islamism is using the religion as a cloak for a dictatorship. There's two very different things. So, for example, Zoran Mamdani is a Muslim, but he is also an Islamist. I mean, he said as much during the campaign. In other words, using your religion as a cover for creating an autocratic regime, whether it be an oligarchy or whether it be a dictatorship. But that's what happened to Iran. They went from a pretty open society to, an Islamist regime that ended up being the chief sponsor of terror in the world. And through the Biden administration, we probably will never know how many sleeper cells or terrorists made their way across the border. Let's see here. What else does this thing say? Here we go. And I quote, the caution raised fears that Iran, which has continued to hammer its Gulf neighbors and whose retaliation has led to the deaths of at least 13 American service members. It's still astonishing me that I'm going to say only 13 service members died. I mean, it's a tragedy that 13 of them did die. But what is truly amazing to me is that only 13 have died. President Trump acknowledged all these concerns on March 11th. Quote, a lot of people came in through Biden and his stupid open border, and we know where most of them are, and we've got our eye on all of them, I think. So anyway, I mean, there's a big question as to who's living where, and truth is, probably never going to know. I found this article this morning, and this just totally different change of subject, totally switching gears. But you never know what people are going to do when they come into fortune, or they have good luck. And this is a perfect example of this. A $167 million Powerball winner has just been outed as a career criminal after he stole $12,000 in his third arrest since hitting the jackpot. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but most people, if you came into a $160 million fortune, you'd probably stop doing whatever. Well, I wouldn't, of course. I would just build a gigantic media company. But there again, I'm not a career criminal. So, but you would think that if you were a career criminal and you had $160 million in the bank, what would possess you to continue your life of crime? From the New York Post, and I quote, a $167.3 million Kentucky Powerball winner who went from career criminal to multimillionaire overnight is accused of stealing a comparatively minuscule $12,000 cash during a head-scratching home burglary over the weekend. James Farthing, 51, was arrested on second-degree burglary and marijuana possession charges Saturday after security footage allegedly captured him breaking into a Lexington residence that evening. Farthing allegedly snatched $12,000 in cash from the home and fled the scene in his black Porsche Messenger before police caught him and spotted a marijuana blunt in plain view and found more bud during a search of his car. The arrest was Farthing's third since he won the lottery nearly a year ago. The greedy burglar has spent a majority of his life behind bars at 25 different correctional institutions before claiming the state's largest jackpot in April, alongside his 77-year-old mother, Linda Grizzle, and girlfriend, Jacqueline Fightmaster. What a name. Jacqueline Fightmaster. Just days after toasting to the massive prize, the tatted-up criminal was cuffed in Florida for allegedly slugging a hotel guest in the face and kicking a deputy who tried to intervene. I guess this just goes to show you that money doesn't really change people. I mean, sometimes it does, but not in this guy's case, man. He's still a thug and a criminal.
That money. I mean,
that's all you can say, man.
Yeah,
money.
There's money, and then you think about that kind of money.
Well, $160 million. I mean, that is, well, $1 million is life-changing money. At least it used to be a lot more, but.
I'm not if you're on appropriations.
Well, yeah, it's true. If you're on appropriations, then $1 million is pocket change. And okay, so there's another one. This guy won more money than we cut from the governor's proposed budget. Isn't that incredible?
He didn't keep that much, though. That's the other side of it, too.
Well, yeah, his total was probably far less, but still, what he probably got 80 million out of it, maybe three quarters instead of just half. But still, man, you win 160 million and you end up going back to your criminal ways. Here's another odd one, and this should come as no surprise to anybody who knows who Bernie Sanders is. This is a piece from Just the News. Vermont's youngest gubernatorial candidate makes the ballot at age 14. And I quote, Roy, a freshman at Stowe High School, worked as a legislative page at a Vermont state house before deciding to run for governor, the Associated Press reported on Friday. In November, Roy will be the first gubernatorial candidate under the age of 18 to appear on Vermont's general election ballot. Now, in Wyoming, you can't do that. You got to be at least 30.
Yeah, there's minimum ages for legislator and governor. And
I mean, we have some politicians that act like they're 14. I wouldn't want to name anybody, Cyrus Western. But, I mean, really, Vermont is going to let this kid run when he's 14 years old? The last election in which a teen ran for Vermont governor was in 2018 when 8th grader so it's even worse, Sonborn sought the Democratic nomination for the office, finishing last in a four-way primary. Roy is on the general election ballot because he created his own third party, the Freedom and Unity Party. Both teens were able to run because the state constitution does not set a minimum age for gubernatorial candidates, requiring only that they have resided in Vermont for 4 years. Interesting point, in Wyoming, you have to be in the state for 5 years, and you have to be 30 years old by the time you take office, which is a big question surrounding a certain person, Democrat, named Gabriel Green. Now, it is true that Gabriel Green will be 30 years old by the time, if he were to win the governor's race and all that. He would be 30 years old by the time he took office. However, An open question is, how long has Gabriel Green lived in Wyoming? Because the earliest date that he would have had to move back would be 2021. Now in 2000, I have him in Washington or 2020, excuse me. I have him in Washington D.C. after he just graduated from American University, and in 2020, I also have him in 2024, excuse me, I've got him in Arizona, where he lived in a couple of different places. But the question is, did he move back to the state of Wyoming in plenty of time to run for governor? And I would argue no. By the way, Gabriel, you are welcome to come on this program and prove to us that you possess the qualifications to run for the governor's office at any time you like. You just let me know, and I would be glad to have you sit right there and tell us why exactly you're qualified to run for governor. All right, let's go ahead and take another break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some people who used to be conservatives, but now are not. There's a surge of those happening in Wyoming, and I want to talk about a couple of them because they match what's happening in national politics. Back in a minute. Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listened to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Watch out! Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. The Cowboy State Politics Podcast, this program, Cowboy State Politics Live, the Open Range Record. You know, it's almost, well, I shouldn't say that because it is not more than I can handle. In fact, the truth is, we're just getting started, my friends. Make sure that you pay attention to the Open Range Record. It's turned out to be a surprisingly popular website. I guess I thought when we started this thing that it would be, it would take a little while to get going, but not so. Turns out people are really ticked off at the Wyoming media and media in general. And the reason for it is there's a couple of reasons for it. First, you don't really have journalism anymore. It's what I referred to earlier as opinion journalism, which kind of means that it's just your opinion. It's not journalism at all. But they wrap it up to look like it's news. And there's lots of examples of that. But there are also talking head commentators, of which I fall into that category. That's what I do for a living is talk. But what we have seen is a lot of people, and I think what it is it's an attempt to remain relevant. And that the way that you do that is you try to create controversy for yourself so that people pay attention. There's a couple of examples of that. One of them is Scott Clem. I don't really have anything personally, against Scott Clem, but he was a conservative. Now he's really not. He's written several columns, attacking Israel and attacking the president and attacking conservatives. And he really doesn't like my business partner very much. Not that that's a qualification of being conservative at all. But you just read his writing, and it's not all that conservative. Now, we really see this on the national level, and I just picked this one. I wanted to talk about this, so I just needed an example. This is a piece from the Daily Caller, and it's entitled Disturbing to Everyone. CNN's SE Cup melts down and suggests that America is becoming North Korea. North Korea is one of the world's most repressive and reclusive countries, yet S.E. Cupp, who used to be a conservative, for a long time, she was on Fox News, and I believe she worked for Glenn Beck at one point. Well, she's gone completely off the rails. Now, she argued during a CNN's morning show, their Table for Five segment, that America was becoming similar to North Korea, even doubling down when former Republican New York City Councilman Joe Borelli told her that she was being extreme. Here's that video segment. Let's go ahead and play it, Ken.
We should not want a militarized United States, with our streets militarized, our voting militarized, our airports militarized. I am so concerned about the North Korea coded stuff that is going on right now. From Pam Bondi unfurling a banner with Trump's face on it on the DOJ building, to Trump putting his signature on our currency and his name on the Kennedy Center, to inviting only friendly media outlets who are going to say exactly what you want into Pentagon briefings. I mean, it goes on and on and on. When did we want to become North Korea? This should be unnerving, disturbing to everyone. This is not partisan. This is...
Okay, all right. So, S.E. Cupp says that we are becoming North Korea. No. Not anywhere close. But she gives a number of examples as to why. She says, our streets are militarized. Our airports are militarized. So first, ICE, or the, Customs Border Patrol, that's not the military. Those are civilian police forces. So, I guess you could try to claim that it's the military, but it's really not. The Democrats held up pay for TSA workers for, I don't know how long this government shutdown has been going on, but it's been a long time, still going on. The Democrats will not fund TSA or ICE. And, there's several spectacular videos of them, not doing that. Chuck Schumer arguing that, under no circumstances are we going to fund ICE, as if they think that that's a winning campaign message. I'm sure it is for their base, but I don't know that it's a demonstrably majority opinion. But it is.
It's an impeachable offense as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
You took an oath. Yeah. I don't understand this idea that we're going to decide what laws we like, what laws we're not like. If you don't like the law, change the law. But as long as it's the law, you got to support it.
And that's the argument that I give a lot of, And I think these people are well-meaning, but you hear this from a lot of hand count advocates that we absolutely have to have hand counting all the way around. There was at least one bill in the legislative session. There was another one that there was an amendment to change everything to hand counting. It failed miserably. But what I always tell these folks is if you like hand counting, the first thing you have to do is change the law, because Wyoming statute says we have to use these counting machines. And so until you change that, your argument is kind of meaningless. But if you don't like what's happening in the country, there's a way to fix it. There's a way to change it. You run for office, you run a bill, and you see if you can convince your colleagues to vote for it. But just saying that the country is being militarized, that is an attempt to create controversy around yourself. And here's why S.E. Cupp went to North Korea, because the Hitler example is a little bit tired. Generally speaking, people hear, "Oh, this person's a Nazi." Well, the Democrats have used that so often that it becomes kind of meaningless. Most people are just like, "Yeah, whatever." And so she tries to pick something else that is equally as offensive, and North Korea is pretty offensive, which, by the way, we have the same abortion restrictions pretty much in Wyoming that North Korea does, or before the heartbeat bill, that is. Once I'm sure that one's going to be challenged in court, but for a while we did have the same restrictions on abortion as North Korea. But this is just an example of a lot of commentators trying to stay relevant. And I think I used to be a big fan of Tucker Carlson. I used to actually record his show when I still had to use a DVR and record it. But I'd make sure I didn't miss an episode when he was on Fox News. And then, in my opinion, he just went kind of off the rails. When I watched his interview with Nick Fuentes, the white supremacist, and he didn't even attempt to push back on anything that guy said. That was pretty much the end of it for me. And we also see this sort of thing in Wyoming. I mentioned Scott Clem in this, but there's several examples of people who used to be conservative and now they just hate the Freedom Caucus. That's the boogeyman in Wyoming right now. Over the weekend, I saw another picture of a sign that said the Freedom Caucus is corrupt. Okay, well, explain how. And secondly, maybe the first question is, explain why. Give me an example of something that the Freedom Caucus did that is so terrible. Just one example will do. Because I think the response to any of this Freedom Caucus derangement syndrome, of which Tom Lubnow and his crew absolutely suffer from, the correct response is, yeah, I do support the Freedom Caucus. Why don't you? And then when they give you a whole laundry list of things that don't have any examples to them, you say, no, be specific. Name me one thing that they did that is so horrible. And none of these people are going to be able to give you an example. But really what it is an attempt to remain relevant and to create some controversy. Because if you create controversy, the attention goes back on you. I mean, it's not about principle. It's not about, trying to advocate for a particular viewpoint. It's about yourself.
If you want to create controversy, stand on principle.
Oh, that's controversial enough right there.
It really is.
Yeah. I mean, it's, if you just take a stand and stick with it, man, you'll have all sorts of people lined up to tell you that you're wrong. Now there's an op-ed and I want to kind of go to a different subject here. There's an op-ed in the Cowboy, and it's John Baer writing, and he entitles it, "How to Tell You're Being Effective in 3 Simple Steps." Now, where I want to start this is the media. So it is true in media, generally speaking, that all news is good news. That, if you happen to own a media outlet like I do, it doesn't really matter if people are saying negative things about the open range record or if they're saying how fantastic it is. I mean, it's all advertising. Like during the whole check fiasco, I told one of the writers for, I think they're from Wildfile. I just said, "Hey, thanks for the advertising. I appreciate it." I walked by Art Washit, the chairman of the Super Special Investigative Committee, after he played my interview with Rebecca, the full thing, beginning to end in that meeting. I walked by, I'm like, "Hey, thanks for the advertising, Art. I really appreciate it." But when you are a candidate for office, I don't know that all attention is good attention. And I think often we tend to feed the beast, for lack of a better term. And let me give you an example. Ken, put this up on the screen for me. Now, okay, so this is the picture that's with John's op-ed, and I'm going to tell you about his op-ed here in just a second. But the reason I wanted to show you this is, look at this advertisement. This thing shows up all over the Cowboy. It's not just on this article. But think about this, right? They publish an op-ed by a pretty conservative guy, and at the bottom of it, they've got or right in the middle of it, rather, they have an advertisement for Eric Barlow, who is not a conservative guy. By the way, there's a great piece on the Open Range Record about Eric Barlow, and it's about his radical environmentalist past. It's entitled "Born in a Barn: Eric Barlow and a History of Radical Environmental Politics in Wyoming." You read that, and you won't be thinking that Eric is a conservative. But here's the point: is that if you want to be, if you want to have media that actually reports the facts, you've got to stop feeding the people that hate you. Stop helping the people that despise you. Okay, so they publish your op-eds. I get it. But when you help them make you look foolish, well, that's an entirely different thing. And by the way, I think this is a great opportunity to just kind of tell you how well the Open Range Record is doing. So just a couple of articles. So that Barlow article I just talked about, it's been seen 11,607 times. Yeah, there it is. Yep.
608 times.
11,608 times. There's a piece about Ogden Driscoll that we ran, why the Democrats like him so much. That one has been seen 5,448 times. There's old Augie. And Slithers. You got to love her. Not so much. And then the piece about Brian Miller and his stupid bylaw change trying to get rid of members of the press. That one has been seen 14,487 times. And so there are media outlets that are absolutely gaining ground in the state, that are absolutely have the reach. No, maybe not exactly the same as the Cowboy, because I'm sure we're nowhere close to that yet. But still, 14,000 times on one article, pretty impressive if you ask me. So let's go to John Baer's op-ed, and he says that there's three steps in being effective. And the first one, he says, that big government Republicans make fool of themselves deriding you. They do this a lot, and all you got to do is pay attention.
Do you know how you pronounce big government Republicans? Boogers.
Boogers?
Booger.
And I quote, when conservatives started making gains in the Wyoming legislature, we went right to work exposing the ideological divide in Wyoming politics. And it's not red versus blue. It's big government Republicans who vote with Democrats all the time versus the people. In 2022, even more conservatives were sent to the state house, and we continued exposing Liz Cheney Republicans, redcoats, people that register as Republicans, but They do that. Boogers. They do that only to get elected. Step two, the media lies about you. And this is kind of where I was going in this segment, but here's what he says. After the people of Wyoming delivered a conservative majority in the Wyoming House, we passed our historic 5 and dime plan, cutting property taxes, returning your Second Amendment rights, protecting elections, and more. Taxpayer-funded media outlets begrudgingly acknowledge these successes, only to go on to lie about what happened in 2026, helping the people that hate you. They obviously claimed the governor's budget was frugal and sensible, despite state spending growing faster than inflation and your paycheck. And he even included a new program that's started out being called Bear Care. John Bear calls it Gordon care or Gordo care. They falsely claimed we cut indiscriminately, when in reality we slowed the growth of government through targeting waste, fraud, and abuse. And Ken, you can speak to this. You were on the Appropriations Committee. I mean, there's a lot of the consternation in the media is that you guys just cut everything with a chainsaw. Is that what happened?
We just cut for the sake of cutting.
Yes, you did. I'm glad you did too.
Indiscriminately. What you never hear in those articles is about the long-range forecast coming from the people that we pay to put on what I call the check engine light. And the last one that I saw, which was after the recalibration stuff was figured in, 628 million upside down by 2029.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't make that up. Although I think it was Casper Star Tribune said that according to his own calculations.
Yeah, that wasn't your calculations.
And I specifically said when I pointed it out, but of course the press just says whatever they want. But I specifically said we got those numbers from LSO. That's what they're paid to do, is to make these predictions. So we're facing a deficit. We said we've got to start cutting back. So we looked for everywhere that we thought we could cut. And most everything that we did was actually slowing the rate of growth from about 3% to about 1%.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong on these numbers, Ken, but in the budget book, and we've shown you this a number of times, but the first column is what'd you spend last year? Excuse me.
Last biennium.
Yeah, last biennium. And then the next column is what would it take to do the same thing that you did last year without the capital construction, right?
Yeah. There are a couple. Any one-time spending is removed from that. And so this is basically bare bones. What would it cost you to operate the same way, to keep doing what you've been doing perpetually?
Right. And so the first column of the governor's budget, I think it was like 11.4 or something like that. The second column was a little bit north of 9, and I think it was like 9.5 billion. And then the third column is all of the exceptions, right?
Yeah.
So those are the things.
The wish list.
Yeah, it's the things that you want to spend money on. And a very interesting column is the next one, and that's when you total up what you did last year, what you want, what exceptions you want, and that gives you a total. And in this case, it was $11.5 billion. Well, the truth is that the budget came in a little bit south of $10 billion. I think it was like 9.9 billion, right around there.
It's bigger than that.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that's just the budget items.
I don't have my notes in front of me, but if I'm not mistaken, we ended up saving about $340 million less than what the governor had requested.
And that's my point, is that the governor wanted X amount, and in the final analysis, what we got was less than what he wanted. Now, it's still an increase, but it's a smaller increase than it was last.
We slowed the rate of growth is what we did. And I'm sorry they don't have those numbers. I should have.
We didn't know we were going here.
Yeah. I need to bring them in and probably walk through that for your audience.
Yeah, well, it's we got to do it in pieces because too many numbers and people's eyes glaze over.
Oh, I can make it interesting.
Oh well, I would love to see you see that attempt. All right, so Bear says step number 3 is that the deep state pulls out all the stops, and this is probably the most significant one. This is the easiest place to see. Quote, in an unprecedented form, Governor Gordon's Political Action Committee dumped $300,000 into legislative races to stop conservatives in 2024 with his PAC, his Prosperity and Commerce PAC. What a stupid name, PAC. Anyway, already he's dumped $150,000 into that Political Action Committee, and I'm sure that he'll give all of that money to conservatives. Not really. Last year, it was pretty much all of the liberals that he dumped money into their campaigns. The governor has placed half a dozen of his preferred election losers into prominent deep state positions. For example, Drew Perkins, who used to be at one time was the president of the Senate, he went on to be Gordon's chief of staff. Defeated Representative Clark Stith, Drag Show Clark Stith, I'll have you know, John, that's his name, Drag Show Clark, has been tapped for a judgeship. Defeated Tom Walters now has a cozy gig as a member of the UW Board of Trustees. And one that I would add in there, too, is former Secretary of State Ed Buchanan, who was a ardent defender of Governor Gordon, also has a judgeship. And then there's the former Attorney General Bridget Hill, who pretty much did the bidding of Gordon's administration. She now sits on the Supreme Court. And so Gordon engages in, I don't know what we want to call it, but he rewards his political allies with big positions, judgeships and, three of the biggest ones are judgeships. Now, all of these people this is Bear again, were rejected by the voters in favor of more conservative candidates. All of these people get to continue to make decisions that impact you and your tax dollars, even though none of them are in elective office anymore. And Bridget Hill never was. You're right and effective when you start taking flack. In Wyoming, this looks like upsetting the troika. That's what Chuck Gray refers to the insiders. With every conservative win, our friend Dave Simpson put it best. Freedom Caucus criticism is all the rage for weak sauce Republicans, because that's pretty much the only argument that they have. They can't argue on policy, because all of their policies spend more of your money and tend to absolutely decrease the amount of personal liberty that you have. And you can see it everywhere. And the truth is that when you start to, allow the government to grow to such an extent, where you see the most of that is in the bureaucracy. And you have unelected people making decisions on how you're to operate, and none of them ever have to face the will of the voters. None of them have to run for re-election. And the most disturbing part is that bureaucracy will be there probably long after your current elected officials are off fishing and playing golf and don't want anything more to do with politics. The same people will be there. And it's, last week we ran some rough numbers, and that there's a little bit more than 46,000 state employees. I know that includes, snowplow drivers and secretaries and all of that. But think about that. Probably around 50,000 people in this state work for Wyoming. And so if you're a new governor and you come in, and generally, you want to get rid of everything that you possibly can that the liberal governor controlled. And in doing so, you got to replace all those positions. Well, you're not going to find that many people to be able to put in a position. And so that bureaucracy continues to stay there. And when budgets grow, that's where most of the money happens. One of the phrases I hate the most in the legislature is the agency will promulgate rules. That's added to a lot of bills. And what that means is unelected bureaucrats get to craft rules that essentially have the force of law.
That's one that I hate too. That means, what it really means is the legislature will abdicate its responsibility.
Yeah. We're going to give it over to the bureaucracy and just let them make any rules that they want. And from the Department of Revenue to the Department of Audit to, you name it. You've got unelected people making rules. And, that's one of the biggest reasons why we have to cut. And it's not like Ken said, you're not actually cutting the services that are there. You're cutting the rate of growth. And I would argue that is not enough. But you have to understand the political reality of where we're at. That sometimes you just don't have the votes to do it. And so you take what you can get.
Yeah, I remembered that I had some numbers here.
Oh, yeah.
So
Let's hear them.
Gordon's budget was $11.1 billion, and this represented a 12% spending increase, outpaces the rate of inflation by about 8%. Okay.
So people are losing money. We're spending more at the government.
JAC's budget, which is the Joint Appropriations Committee, when we got done working it, was $480 million below the governor's rec, but still a 3% spending increase.
Oh, how dare you cut everything?
Yeah. We slashed indiscriminately, and yet we're still spending more by about 3%. Okay, so a 3% increase as opposed to a 12% is not a cut. A House budget came out 170 million below the governor's rec, which would represent a 6.5% increase. The Senate, which basically just went right back to the governor's rec and then added on another 1.4 million. And so JCC then ended up 143 million below the governor's rec. So that kind of tells you how it bounced around by there. Bottom line, the state expenditures have increased 59% since Gordon took office in 2019.
Yep.
Meanwhile, GDP is below average in Wyoming, inflation is above average, and median household income is below average since 2019. How many of you? It doesn't sound to me like the Business Council was doing that well.
No, they weren't.
Yeah. And then the question here, how many of you have seen your household income increase by 59%?
None.
So tell me that the governor's budget was the essentials.
Well,
that it was the absolute minimum.
Well, that's what he told everybody. These are the
Exactly.
essentials. Yeah. Well, it's a big joke. It's worse than that because it's it's your tax dollars. But you're continually lied to say, oh, we have to have all these services, and that those evil Republicans, they're cutting everything, when the truth is very, very different. All right. So, Ken, let's go ahead and take another break. And when we come back, we'll finish up the program. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by God himself.
But even God waited until he was done to say it was tremendous.
Well, it is tremendous.
And he never said tremendous.
And everything that God does is tremendous, my friend. All right, my friends, welcome back to the program. We have another establishment type entering into the 2026 election for the House of Representatives. And I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but a lot of the people that they're putting up to run against solid conservatives are these folks that are steeped in the, we'll call it the secondary bureaucracy. And by that I mean, it's the boards and commissions that are still technically part of government, but they're not directly in government.
They're boogers.
They're boogers.
Big government Republicans.
All right. So this guy is the dean that clashed with Ed Seidel at the University of Wyoming. And his name is, let's see, his last name is Wright. Let me find his full name here so we get this.
Yeah, he says, do the right thing.
Yeah, do the right thing. Let's see here. Cameron Wright is his name. Now, he was the dean at the University of Wyoming, and he did clash with Ed Seidel. And the reason for it is Ed Seidel tried to fire him. And so he put up a fight, and now he's suing to have his old position back. But here's what the Cowboy says about him. Quote, Wright served for 30 years in the U.S. military, both enlisted and as an officer in the Navy and the Air Force, says the statement, adding that he's lived in Albany County for more than 23 years, where he and his wife raised their son, who's now graduating from Laramie High School. How can you be an enlisted person and an officer? Must have gotten promoted.
Well,
Yeah, had to have been.
it's not just a direct promotion. You have to go through, usually officer candidate school. OCS, they call it. There are ways that it can happen. I actually was an acting warrant officer for a little while.
Oh, okay.
Very little while, but
was it just another job title without the increase in pay, or
a little bit of that. There was an increase in pay while I was filling that slot. But
okay, fair enough.
Completely derailed it. Go back to Wright.
Okay, so let's go to Wright, who is probably not on the right side of things. Anyway, he told the Cowboy that he's been a Republican all his life, and he won't be a member of the Dirty Freedom Caucus or any caucus. He said, adding that what I represent would be the people in the district. Now, here is what I want you to pay attention to. This is in his statement. These are his list of priorities. Keeping Wyoming lands accessible and protected. Okay, so he's right in line with Carly Provenza and all this corner crossing stuff. I don't necessarily, I do have a problem with the whole corner crossing thing. I think it's a property rights issue. And it's a lot of the public land, I think it's in Wyoming and we ought to manage it. Not to say that it wouldn't be public, but I think that's a larger, more complicated discussion. Here's one of the red flags that I love. Building an economy where families can stay. So that leads one to believe that it's a so-called affordable housing and all of those things.
What it means is government's going to intervene.
Yes.
That's the whole problem.
Yes, there you go. You hit the nail on the head that if that is his priority, building an economy, that's the same thing that Josh Durrell said, that it's his job to create an economy. It's total hogwash.
Well, they didn't do much of a job.
No, it didn't. Here's another one. Strengthening core industries and growing new ones. Now, this is an example of picking winners and losers, where government is absolutely involved in the private sector, which, he's been at the University of Wyoming for a while, so why wouldn't he think that this is the way things ought to work? Supporting strong schools and workforce training. Again, this is government intervention in the economy. And this last one, and defending constitutional rights. Okay, what do you suppose that means?
It doesn't mean what you think it means.
You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
It does not mean what you might think it means.
But the big point here is this guy's been at the university for a long time. He's in the engineering school, or at least he was, college professor. And you would think that he would come up with some things that could be pretty specific, except that if he got specific, then he would have to defend them. The reason why candidates use such vague terms or vague phrases is so that they can make them mean anything that they want to mean. However, I am going to reach out to this Wright character, and we'll find out how right or wrong he is. But the truth is, the buzzwords that I just gave you, not a fan of Mr. Wright. And listen to the reason why he says he's running against Ocean Andrew, which that's Ocean's district. Quote, Wright said he differs from Andrew in that I've got a lot of experience over the years representing different kinds of teams and getting things done and making decisions and advocating for various things. He continued, I think he's made a lot of people happy, and he's not made a lot of people happy, and they want me to be their advocate. Andrew noted in his own interview that the statement was fairly clean by way of campaign barbs and said he didn't wish to respond to it or Wright's statement on a point-by-point basis.
Getting things done. That one is interesting. If you know Ocean, that's somebody that gets stuff done.
Yeah, well, why would
in the private sector and in the legislature?
No. Why would we want a guy who started a business from nothing and made it into a huge, successful operation? Why would we want that type of guy?
Oh, no, we can't have that type of thinking.
No, why? We should have.
Because he didn't reach out to the government to get government help.
Well, exactly. You know, I mean, why would we want somebody that's not in favor of growing the economy and doing it on his own? You know, the truth is that Mr. Wright, and I don't know him from Adam, but he's been at the university for a really long time. He's been steeped in government, and you can just read through his very vague priorities and just see where the buzzwords are or aren't. But, you know, I mean, when you're at the university for a really long time, you get steeped in that government philosophy. Of course, you're not going to think that the guy who built a giant business that is very successful, that gets sold out to at every town, it's off the hook fish.
There's
the
another
food
thing
trucks.
that a lot of these people are saying is I'm going to listen.
Yeah, I
I'm
love
going to
that
listen to the people.
Julie Jarvis.
Basically, what that means is I don't have any principles.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be bent to whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, lick your finger, find out which way the wind blows. All right, my friends. Well, that pretty much does it for today's installment of the broadcast. We'll be back tomorrow, Wednesday, for another edition of Cowboy State Politics Live. Have a good afternoon, my friends. I'll see you tomorrow.